Welcome. I'm Karen Lips, president of the Network of Enlightened Women. New works to educate, equip, and empower young women to be principled leaders for a free society. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Senator Marsha Blackburn. Senator Blackburn was elected to the U.S. Senate from Tennessee in 2018, and previously she represented Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. Senator Blackburn's public service is dedicated to promoting opportunities for women and making America a more prosperous place to live. Her leadership philosophy is based on her experiences in the private sector, as well as her experiences from being a mother and grandmother. Senator Blackburn began her career in public service in 1995 when she was named executive director of the Tennessee Film, Entertainment, and Music Commission. In 1998, she was elected to the Tennessee State Senate, where she led a statewide grassroots campaign to defeat a proposed state income tax. Originally from Laurel, Mississippi, Senator Blackburn is a graduate of Mississippi State University. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. I am absolutely delighted to join you and to join the network today and speak with women who are looking for an opportunity to make their mark on not only the conservative world, but on the cause of freedom in our country. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. We're excited to have you. You are certainly making a mark, Senator. And this month, as an organization, we are talking a lot about professional development and how young women can make decisions now and develop skills now to help them become leaders in their careers and in their communities in the future. Can you share a little bit about how you think about leadership and some lessons that you've learned?
Well, first of all, I'm so pleased that you all are not timid about using the word leadership, because many times women will say, well, let's talk about my center of influence or my sphere of influence, the universe of friends. But they should talk about leadership and they should work to develop these skills. And Karen, I will tell you, one of the things that I think is vitally important as you look at personal leadership is to realize that these skills that you are developing while you're in college, while you're in organizations, all of these skills can be used in the public sector. They can be used in the private sector. They can go on and be used to enrich your life in any number of ways, because these skills are a transferable commodity. And as you go through your career, what you do is to realize if you change jobs, if you switch careers, you don't go back to zero and start over. What you are doing is standing on that foundation of skills that you have built through a diverse career, that you are building on these skills. It may be serving as a leader of a team for a project in college, or it may be leading an organization on your college campus. Everything you're doing there is building skills, and there are lessons that you are learning. And then as you move into your career, what are you going to do? You're going to draw back on those skills and those experiences and stand on that knowledge base that you have built, and be really proud of the fact that you have those experiences in your background that you can pull forward and use them to better your life and your chances for advancement in your career.
Well, I love how your bio and how you've talked in your early remarks in our conversation about how skills translate. You know, your bio mentions how your private sector skills and skills as a mother and a grandmother. I think there's sometimes a tendency among young women to think they've got to think of their career linearly, and that, you know, you're going to go through and just develop one skill at a time, when really in a lot of your life experiences, you're developing so many different skills. Could you talk about how young women on college campuses can look at what's in front of them now and be effective leaders now, and in so doing, in leading clubs and speaking out for conservative ideas, they will just develop the skills that then will translate into leadership later?
Well, that's exactly right. And, think of all of this as building equity in yourself. Just as you build equity in a home or a business, you are building it in your life. And bear in mind that women have a much more circuitous route in their life, in their experiences, and in their careers. And I really like the fact, Karen, that you talked about this isn't linear. It's not on a track or progression. And many times men have the tendency to think of a trajectory or a linear path. And for women, what they will do is maybe work with a corporation and then move into a small business, or take time off to have a child, or to care for an elderly relative. And there is much more diversity in the background of women. So what you should do is, with every experience that you have, think of what nugget can you pull from that experience and use that as something that you can build a path on. Maybe you are involved in a project and you're going to be the leader in this project, and set a time for a presentation for your working group. And then you're going to lead that presentation, or maybe you're going to do the graphics for that presentation. How can you use that going forward? What's the nugget that you would want to pull from that and say, this is something I've never done that I've learned how to do? And I can, next time something comes up, say, I have experience leading a team. I have experience drafting an article or a speech, or preparing graphics. And this was a successful project for my team. So that is how you want to use those experiences.
Well, I very much appreciate how you frame that in terms of nuggets. That's a great way to think about it, because you can learn so many lessons from different experiences and then take those with you. I'd love to turn now to get your opinion on what leadership qualities do you think are most important? What have allowed you to be so successful in the Senate?
One of the things that I put my emphasis on is reaching out to others and trying to work in a bipartisan manner. And I will always, I tell people regularly, I am always willing to have a conversation with someone who wants to make the lives of Tennesseans better. And so I'm always willing to have those conversations. Likewise, sometimes people will say, well, I think you're wrong on this issue, and they will be a bit harsh. I say, well, look, take this as an opportunity to change my mind. If you're trying to convince me, then give me your best shot at this and approach it that way. But keeping lines of communication keeping those open, that is a very important thing to do. And in my work, I fully realize that this nation and our freedoms have been well served by having robust, respectful, bipartisan debate. And I look at some of the goings on, if you will, and the things that are transpiring with the cancel culture, where it is a my way or the highway. If you don't agree with me, I'm going to cancel you out type concept. That is something that means you are continuing to reduce your sphere of influence, because you are negating anyone who may disagree with you. And the approach should be to widen our circle of friends and our sphere of influence, and to say, you may not always agree with me, but you're always going to know where I stand. And we're going to learn how to agreeably disagree.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned having these conversations with people that have different opinions than you do, because I'm afraid that on college campuses now, this culture that we're now seeing nationally of trying to shut down opposing voices it's alive on college campuses, this shutting down, trying to make sure that views that you don't agree with don't get heard. It's really a sad state of affairs. And we sense it a lot from conservative women on campus who feel that the left and some of the modern feminist groups just want to shut them down. They don't want to have conversations. What advice do you have?
I find that also, and I hear that regularly from people. Here is something that I think is vitally important to remember. And it is that conservative women are very independent-minded women. And when you look at the left and their approach to working with women, what do they say to women? Submit to our agenda, conform to our way of doing things. If you don't, then we don't want to hear from you. What do conservative women say? I respect your right to speak. I respect your freedom of speech. We may not agree, but you have every much a right to speak your mind as I have to speak mine.
That's such a difference. And even at our national conference at an organization, we will bring in someone with an opposing view to come speak and give them a platform to show the value of civil debate. And you just don't see that coming out of the modern feminist movement. And it's too bad. So I wanted to ask, what advice do you have for conservative women in this culture now where the left tries to shut them down?
One of the things that I would say is vitally important is know who you are and what you're made of. And as we look at this, the kind of the tone and tenor of debate now, I think it is important for us as conservatives to stand on our principles, those founding principles, making certain that we are standing for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that we fully understand that the Bill of Rights give us those rights. It ensures our rights, doesn't give us the rights, but ensures our right to free speech. It ensures our right to bear arms. It ensures our right to privacy. Those are rights to us. So it's important to know that those are your rights. It's important also to be aware and to help make the point to those that have a different opinion. You can express your opinion. We appreciate that. But bear in mind, if you take your freedoms and hand them to the government, then government is only going to give back to you a little bit of those freedoms. They're only going to give you what they think you should have. So whatever government giveth, government can take away.
That's a lesson I'm afraid a lot of people still need to learn as they look to the government for solutions, which is too bad. But I appreciate early in those comments you mentioned really knowing who you are as individuals is so important as leaders. And I was wondering, you inspire a lot of young conservative women. Can you talk about who inspires you as a leader?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You know, and there are so many people and then individuals from times past that you can look at. I have always been intrigued as you go back and look in the Bible, and Deborah, who was a judge, Esther, who was a queen. I have always found it so intriguing that that Jesus called forth non-traditional leaders to save his nation at very important times. And when you go through the Bible and read through this, you see that importance. Likewise, you see the touches that Abigail Adams had on her husband and son. And she said very explicitly to her husband at our nation's founding, remember the ladies. And how important, what a wonderful admonition. And then you look at the suffragists and Susan B. Anthony and those that started the suffrage movement at Seneca Falls, pushing for women to get the right to vote. how they worked with so many of the abolitionists in the 1800s, the mid 1800s, then how they carried that fight forward for 72 years, all the way to 1920 to get the right to vote. And you think about Carrie Chapman Catt and the work she did in Nashville in the summer of 1920 to push. This was their last chance to secure the right to vote for women. And the work that they did that summer, pushing forward to make certain that that 19th Amendment got signed and that women got the right to vote. And that just inspires me. Think about that, 72 years in a day and time when people many times will say they don't have 72 minutes to work on something, or 72 months, or 7 years. And you think about how long they pushed to get those rights. Also, the inspiration that you draw from someone like Margaret Thatcher, who made such an impact on her nation as she found a way to turn Great Britain around as they were approaching socialism. And then, of course, in my life, a grandmother who was a real trailblazer, a mother who has been fearless in her work to beautify our nation and to give to other people to improve their lives, their quality of life, and teachers that have helped to mentor me, and people that I've had a lifelong relationship with who have chosen and willingly invested in my life, former employers that have been there to stand with me and to support me as I carried on new challenges. And you know, Karen, that is why it is vitally important for women to start building that team around them, those listening ears that they can go back to and say, help me think this through. That is a big part of making an impact.
Well, that team is important, and I'd say it's especially important for conservative women because of the criticism that we often face. And some of our students submitted some questions in advance for you, Senator, included Annie
Sure.
Kerr, who's one of our leaders from Belmont University. And she wanted to ask you, how do you stand up to the criticisms that you face as a conservative woman?
And you know that the criticisms are going to come. I say, I know what I'm made of, and I know the purpose for which I am here. And because of that, I just let the criticisms kind of roll off. You know, Taylor Swift has criticized me, and people say, well, what do you say to Taylor Swift? I say, tell her to take her own advice, shake it off. And just keep pushing ahead. And when you know what you stand for and know what your focus is, and then when you stay grounded, I go home every weekend. I don't live in Washington, D.C. I make that flight to and from D.C. every week and right back to Tennessee to work in my state, to spend time with my family. Every Sunday, I cook lunch for my family after church, and the children and the grandchildren come, and that is our time to spend together as a family. And believe you me, that helps to keep you grounded because it reminds you what is important to your family. I've always said there are 5 things that I fight for every day: faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. And that helps me to stay grounded. When I look at those grandkids and I think about $2 trillion for spending in this and $2 trillion for that and $6 trillion of deficit spending in 1 year, who's going to pay for this? It is going to be my children and my grandchildren.
That is true. And you talk about that nourishing meal. I'm sure that doesn't just nourish you with the food, but that having that family time is just so important and
Correct.
probably re-energizing. And I know you've got to run to go to a vote. So I might ask you just one last quick question from one of our students, Mackenzie Waddington from Belmont, who wants to know what finally made you make the move and run for office, which I know is sometimes a tough decision to make for a lot of people.
Well, and I never thought I would be someone that ended up in elective office. I had always been very involved in my community, involved in planting and growing and building a church, and involved in projects with the Chamber of Commerce, or starting a library in the community, or chairing my Republican Party. And as we were recruiting candidates for a state Senate seat, somebody said, "No, Marsha, you need to be the candidate." And I had just never thought about myself as a candidate. And it's important to remain open and to realize that, God has a will for your life. And it is not your job to chart your course, it is His. But it is your job to be ready and open when opportunities come your way, and to think, my goodness, well, maybe this is something that I should consider. So be open-minded when those unexpected opportunities come your way.
That's such a great lesson to end on. Thank you, Senator, for joining us today. And I encourage our students, if you haven't, check out her most recent book, The Mind of a Conservative Woman. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Bye-bye. Bye,
Bye.
all.